ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob from the Area 51 Racing Podcast. Tonight is episode 70. I'll be giving you my race recap from this past weekend's races at Texas Motor Speedway, and then also Rob's racing hot takes from this past weekend in NASCAR. To start out with, I will be going over the race results for the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series races that all took place this past weekend at Texas. Start out with the Xfinity Series race report for Jeremy Clements Racing, brought to you by Dialed In Focus Pouches by Whitetail Smokeless. Dialed In Focus Pouches by Whitetail Smokeless is a product made by Whitetail Smokeless, which is a family-owned business owned by Rob Kikebush in Jefferson, Wisconsin. They sell tobacco alternative products that are handcrafted and are tobacco-free. They also sell dialed-in focus pouches that use a proprietary blend of nootropics that help with concentration and energy, as well as lowering blood pressure and improving reaction time. If you're interested in any of Whitetail Smokeless products, please go to www.deerdip.com to check out their products today. They also have merchandise that they sell, and then also an offshoot of Whitetail Smokeless's stickygears.com, where they have Jeremy Clements racing gear in general for the race fan, along with some other racing gear for other NASCAR and ARCA Xfinity Series drivers. So go ahead and give them a checkout, and Rob and his family are good people, and they do a great job, and they're the leading edge of this new energy focus pouch trend that is going around. So please, like I said, check them out. Check their social media platforms, Twitter, or X, I should say, Instagram, Facebook, etc. They are posting a lot about their dialed-in focus pouches. In fact, dialed-in focus pouches, their logo is on Jeremy Clements' race car every week on the C-pillar of the race car, as they partner with Jeremy Clements Racing. To give Jeremy Clements Racing a race recap, Friday and qualifying and practice was rained out. So their lineup was determined by the rulebook metrics based off of current point standings. I believe it was a race finish, the last race, and then a percentage of how you're running in the last race, I believe. Ended up being Jeremy's starting position was P25. Saturday, the race, Jeremy started P25, stage 1. On lap 3, Jeremy had to pit because he was having radio problems. The radio transmitter needed to be replaced as it was not working properly. They got that taken care of, but the radio periodically throughout the course of the rest of the race was not working properly, and at times Jeremy had problems hearing RC, his spotter, communicating with him. In that first stage, the car was really tight. At the competition caution on lap 21, which ended up being a caution for a car that spun, they came in and did a pit stop and made big adjustments to the car. However, they got a penalty for an uncontrolled right rear tire. So as a result, they had to restart at the tail of the longest line. And ultimately, they got lucky because there was an early caution before the end of stage 1, and they ended up being the last car on the lead lap. Stage 2, the pit stop before stage 2 started, they got a penalty for a crew member over the wall too soon. So again, they had to restart at the tail of the longest line. Jeremy, during the stage, continued to say he was fighting a very tight car, and Case Kallenbach, his crew chief, and the team kept making adjustments, trying to free his car up and make it better for him. Unfortunately, it's continued to be tight, and he ended up finishing P24 in stage 2. Stage 3, unfortunately, the car continued to be tight. They continued making adjustments that eventually started to help the car a little bit, and as a result of that, Jeremy was able to move forward during the racing. And at one point, he came on the radio towards the middle end of the stage and said he had a really bad vibration that he thought was the flywheel on the engine. And then at another point, RC Jeremy's spotter said he could see smoke coming from Jeremy's car. Crew chief Case Kallenbach said he saw the smoke and thought it was possibly coming from the engine. And like I said, Jeremy also continued having radio issues where he's having problem communicating, especially during this third stage with his spotter, RC. On lap 195, the 27 car, Jeb Burton, washed up the track, forcing the number 42 car of Anthony Alfredo to make contact with the left rear of Jeremy's car, causing Jeremy's car to hit the wall with the right side of his car. They ended up having to come in and pit under the caution to pull out the damaged area to clear a tire rub. They went back out on the track, and they thought they had the tire rub cleared. Jeremy came on the radio and said he still thought he had a tire rub. Case and RC said it didn't look like the tire was rubbing. So they ended up staying out. Due to all the cautions in the stage, along with Jeremy having a decent car, being able to make up several spots on track, it helped him work his way up to P13 with 7 laps to go in the race. Unfortunately, on lap 201, the race went into overtime in a green-white checker. The first lap of the green-white checker, Jeremy's car spun backwards hard into the turn 2 wall, and caused extensive damage that resulted in Jeremy not being able to finish the race, and unfortunately caused him to finish the race as a DNF, and finish P31 8 laps down. I believe this was the first DNF of the season for Jeremy Clement's team out of the first 12 races of the year. After the wreck, there was a heated exchange between Jeremy and his crew chief Case, and it was based out of frustration and anger because they had a good day going, and unfortunately, the car, for some reason, spun backwards and went hard into the wall. Fortunately, the TV coverage didn't show the wreck until the car was actually just about ready to make contact with the wall. So I don't know what caused the car to go on the wall, if another car tagged him in the rear and got him loose, or he just got loose coming off the corner, or what it may have been. But according to Case's crew chief, I messaged him and he said it wasn't a rubbed tire that went flat that caused the wreck. So whatever reason it was an unfortunate event and ultimately ruined a really good day. But either way, it shows the grit and determination of this team, never giving up, continuing to fight, continuing to drive. I mean, obviously Jeremy had an ill-handling car. Case and him kept working on getting it better, and Jeremy was driving his ass off to get the car, even being as tight as it was, moving forward in the field. So that was a good sign. I feel gutted for the team that they ended up not getting the results that they deserved, but their hard work and dedication and progress in the shop and on the track is definitely showing up. So ultimately, Jeremy still sits P19 in the driver's points. The Xfinity Series race in general was an okay race. There were a lot of cautions. In fact, 23 of the 38 cars in the field were involved in an accident at some time during the race, which is mind-blowing. That means only, if my math is correct, 15 cars were not involved in an accident. That's just crazy. This was the most cars involved in an accident in any Xfinity Series race held at Texas Motor Speedway. I think maybe it was due to the rain that the track was green and there are a bunch of bumps on the track that really get the cars unsettled in all the series, trucks and Cup also. And that as a result of that, that was causing a lot of the cars to spin and wreck. Also, there were a handful of cars for some reason were cutting the tri-oval apart and going through the grass, which was also causing them to wreck. A lot of it had to do with the cars were following so close to one another that when the first car went off into the grass, the second car went off a little farther, and the third car behind, or the next car behind them, went out a little farther, and then it caused a wreck. With all the rain, the grass was really wet and the ground was really soft, so the cars dug into the grass and the dirt, and it caused a lot of damage to the cars and a lot of wrecks also, not only in the Xfinity Series, but also in the Truck Series. Same thing happened there. The race was pretty much dominated by Justin Allgaier until lap 156, when he was trying to pass a lap car, the number 5 car, Chris Wright, who was not at full speed. Allgaier was approaching him in turn 4, trying to go underneath him to pass him. And as Allgaier started to go under Wright's car to overtake him, the two cars collided, causing them both to spin and wreck. This unfortunately ended Allgaier's day. Allgaier, like I said, had a really good car. He had won the first stage and led 99 laps in the race. The race ultimately ended up going to a green-white checker. The lineup for the first green-white checker was Sam Mayer in the 41 car, Nick Sanchez in the 48 car, Austin Hill in the 21 car, and then Kyle Larson in the 88 car. They all battled it out on the restart, and on that first lap, unfortunately, Jeremy Clements backed his car into the turn 2 wall, bringing out another caution, causing a second green-white checker. Mayer in the Mayer, I should say, in the 41, Sanchez in the 45, Hill in the 21, and Larson in the 88 again battled it out. This time, after the restart, Sanchez ended up hitting the turn 2 wall and took himself out of contention. Larson was able to clear Mayer and Hill to take the lead and then ultimately the win. Taylor Gray in the 54 was able to get by Mayer and Hill to finish P2. Larson ended up, like I said, winning the race in the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevy. He was filling in for Connor Zilich, who was injured the week before in a hard crash at Talladega, where he injured his lower back. Taylor Gray got P2 in the number 54 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, and P3 was Riley Herbst in the number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. The Xfinity Series is off now until Saturday, May 24th, when the race is at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time at Charlotte Motor Speedway. You can watch this race on the CW. On Friday night was the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race. Practice and qualifying was rained out on Friday. They originally sounded like they weren't even going to be able to get the truck race in because of the rain, but eventually it cleared off where they were able to get the truck race in. The track was really green as a result. And as a matter of fact, I was listening to Ty Majeski, the number 99 or 98 ThorSport Ford truck, his scanner, and he said on the scanner on pace laps before the race started that the black area of the track was like a sheet of ice. It was extremely slick. As a result of the slick track and the bumps on the track, several of the trucks wrecked as a result during the race. And also, like I had mentioned during my Xfinity race recap, several of the trucks for some reason clipped the grass by cutting the tri-oval short and caused them to wreck as well. There ended up being 11 cautions in this race. which was the most in the Truck Series race this year. The number 11 Tricon Garage Toyota, driven by Corey Heim, was in another zip code. I mean, his truck was on rails, and it was like he had another gear and another whole level of speed in his truck. He dropped back in the field after a pit cycle, and I'm not kidding. It seemed like within 3 laps he was back up to the front of the pack within the top 3-4 car trucks. It was crazy how strong his truck was. Carson Hocevar, Cup Series driver, was driving the number 7 Spire Chevy truck, was also very strong, running up towards the front of the pack. It was battling for the lead at a few times. He did actually have the lead over Heim, but he ended up having issues with his battery, and ultimately he had to pit on lap 140 to change his battery, which took him out of contention. Ben Rhodes in the 99 ThorSport Ford, Daniel Hemrick in the 19 McAnally Higman Racing Chevy, and Roger Caruth, the number 71 Spire Chevy, all had strong trucks and ran toward the front of the field the majority of the race. The race ended up finishing under a green-white checker due to a late caution. On the restart for the green-white checker, Heim cleared Ben Rhodes, who didn't have a great restart. Rhodes ended up dropped to 4th with Hemrick and Caruth passing him. And ultimately, Heim ended up winning the race. P1 was Heim in the number 11 Tricon Garage Toyota. P2 was Daniel Hemrick in the number 19 McAnally Higman Racing Chevy. And then P3 was Roger Caruth in the 71 Spire Motorsports Chevy. It was good to see Roger get a good finish and get rewarded for how good his truck was and how good he drove and ran the race. His team did. He's had some really good runs this year, just hasn't been rewarded with good finishes for one reason or another. The NASCAR Cup Series race was on Sunday. Cup Series practice and qualifying was Saturday. Carson Hocevar, the driver in the number 77 Spire Motorsports Chevy, got his first career Cup Series pole. During practice, I was listening to the Performance Race Network, or PRN broadcast, and they were interviewing Penske driver Ryan Blaney of the number 12 Ford. Blaney said, while being interviewed, that you can't pass at Texas, so track position is going to be important. Blaney was absolutely correct. Cars were getting unsettled in the bumps on the track, and there was not a lot of passing. I did watch the beginning of the race, and ultimately I ended up turning it off because I lost interest because there was no passing. As a result, I actually turned on the ASA Midwest Tour Super Late Model Joe Shear Classic race that was ran at Madison International Speedway here in Wisconsin on the streaming platform Track TV. Mark Martin was the guest track marshal or parade marshal or guest of honor. I can't think of the exact terminology, but he was there signing autographs before the race, and they had the Midwest Truck Series race, and then the Super Late Model ASA Midwest Tour race. Both races were really good. There was side-by-side passing. There was clean racing. So I watched that for a while, and then finally I was not feeling great, having some pain. So I ended up having to take some pain medicine, and I ended up taking a nap. I later checked that evening, checked my phone and saw that Joey Logano had won. He turned around his season. And P2 was Ross Chastain, the driver of the number 1 Trackhouse Chevy. P3 was Ryan Blaney, the driver of the Penske number 12 Ford. It was good to see Chastain finally get a good finish. He's had a really down year this year for some reason, and I guess the Trackhouse in general, the number 99 of Daniel Suarez as well, hasn't really performed as well as expected this year. But that's basically the gist of my race reports from this week. We'll get into the Rob's Racing hot takes for this week. My first one is Dale Jr. on his podcast was talking about the current point system for NASCAR that they use for the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup Series, and how it creates no urgency for teams or drivers to do good every week, as a bad week doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. He said that back in the day when the Winston Cup point system was used, if you had a bad race or a DNF at the beginning of the year, you're basically pretty much eliminated from being able to contend to win the championship. And then he used an example of Ryan Blaney as of the finish at Talladega Speedway 2 weeks ago. Blaney is a top 10 in points in the current NASCAR point standing system. If the Cup Series used the old Winston Cup Series point system, Blaney would be 15th in points. And Blaney's had 4 DNFs in the first 11 races, I think it is. I think this Talladega was the 11th. This past week in Texas was the 12th race. So with 4 DNFs in this current point system, he is in the top 10. Whereas if it was the Winston Cup point system, he'd be 15th in points. I mean, that's a big difference. And it's because he's won a bunch of stages and has gotten stage points and some playoff points by winning stages and stuff. But I'm not a fan. I've said this before. I'm an old school NASCAR guy. I'm for the Winston Cup point system. To me, you show up and you compete every week, and whoever's the best and most consistent gets rewarded. And in this, I see this current point system as a gimmick by NASCAR. It's possible that a driver, if 16 different drivers don't win in this current point system, a driver that doesn't win a race but is consistent during the year gets in to the playoffs, they could potentially win the championship. So the way they got it set up, the point system is made to reward the drivers that win. So whereas the Winston Cup system is rewards the drivers, well, also that win, but also that are consistent every week. There's no gimmick stage points, stage breaks. There's no regular season champion. There's no, playoff point or any of that, the gimmick stuff. It's just you show up, you race, you get points, and you move on. And like I said, I'm an old school NASCAR fan. That's what I would prefer. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't enjoy the playoff system. Yeah, it does bring excitement. I said something about my preference for the Winston Cup thing, and a fan jumped on me and said, well, why would you be in favor of a system where a driver could win the championship 4 or 5 weeks before the end of the season? Well, the reason for that would be that means that driver had won a bunch of races and was consistent and earned it. And it would still be exciting because other drivers would still be contending for positions. They're still racing. Even though the championship has already been locked up and won, it's still racing. So, I mean, I get both sides of it, but just because I'm an old school NASCAR guy, that's my preference. And I agree with Dale Jr. 100%. There really isn't, um, an incentive to not do good every week per se with a scoring point system. I mean, a team could have a bad week and just like, oh, well, we'll move on next week and we'll do better. I guess it is what it is right now, but we'll move on to my second thing. Second hot take this week. Denny Hamlin on his Actions Detrimental podcast said he wants to drive an Xfinity car at a super speedway because you can actually pass and actually race. He said when you pull up behind a car, the air between the cars pushes the car in front of you forward. Current cars cannot do that. They can't race side by side. They can't bump draft. They can't, they can try to bump draft, but it doesn't work. And he was asking, somebody put me in an Xfinity car at a super speedway. I'd love to go race because every time I watch the super speedway racing in the Xfinity series, the races are exciting and they're actually racing. And once again, here's another driver and team owner at 23XI who is saying that the Xfinity series platform is, in this case, at super speedways, is better than the current Cup platform at super speedways. I mean, I don't know how many more people need to, in the sport, and drivers and team owners and NASCAR greats have to say something to get NASCAR's attention. I mean, when Elton Sawyer, the senior vice president of NASCAR competition, says at Talladega that there was, I don't know, I think it was 46 lead changes, and why do we need to fix this? He just doesn't get it, that the racing, and I went over the 46 lead changes. That was absurd, that he thought that. But the issue is these cars are terrible, and something drastically needs to be done to improve the Cup racing because eventually, viewership is going down. I guess this past week I just saw that viewership for the Texas race was up this year over last year. So that is a good thing. The reason why I am, I guess, bagging or being negative about the Cup series is because I'm such a diehard NASCAR fan that I want to see really good racing and a really good product on the track without gimmicks. You don't need gimmicks to make the racing good. Like Mark Martin had said in a tweet I said last week, that people that like cars and racing like cars and racing. They're there to watch the cars race and go fast around a track. They don't need gimmicks like stage breaks, stage points, etc., to have an interest in the sport. So I guess that's my point on point two. Again, that the Xfinity series platform, you got another Cup driver saying, "Hey, that looks fun. I want to drive a car in that series." And then the third thing that goes sort of hand in hand with the number two is three-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and Hall of Fame member Tony Stewart, another retired race car driver and former team owner of Stewart-Haas Racing, said on the Rubbins Racing podcast that winning the Daytona 500 doesn't mean the same now as it used to be 15 to 20 years ago. Stewart said that the guys who have recently won shouldn't have won the Daytona 500, as that is the only race that they have won. And he said that some of the guys maybe have won one or two other races, but it's not like it used to be where the Daytona 500 winner has won several races. And he said he's friends with several of these guys that have won the 500 and haven't won other races. So he's not like, wasn't going to name them, but wasn't going to bag them because they had success and won the race. It was more, he was saying that because of this current car, he said that now anybody in the field could win the Daytona 500 because the cars are so equal. And, you know, again, Tony Stewart hit it right on the head. So now you had the king, Richard Petty, saying the same thing at basically the same thing after Talladega, where basically the cars were running side by side. Somebody threw a green flag, somebody threw a white flag, and then somebody threw a checkered flag, and Austin Cindric won. It was also described as like watching cars drive down an interstate side by side. You know, again, NASCAR, why, you know, Elton Sawyer, I believe it's Steve France. Why aren't you guys listening and trying to do something to make the Cup Series where it used to be? I mean, this change to this current Gen 7 Cup car, like I've said several times, it has been in my opinion, a failed project. Just sort of like the cars of tomorrow. I think it was like 2008, 2009 or somewhere around them. Same thing. It just was a gimmick, didn't work. And they went back to a regular race car. I don't know. You know, I wish somebody could convince NASCAR to listen and make some changes. But, you know, who am I? I'm a guy that loves racing, has been involved at a low level of the NASCAR racing series at a grassroots level. So I have some experience in the racing industry, I guess you could say, at a low level. Now, obviously not anywhere near the top 3 levels of racing in NASCAR, but I have an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. And I just, if you don't have happy drivers and happy team owners and happy fans, then eventually your sport is going to start going downhill. And, you know, the teams and the fan or the drivers are the ones that are in the entertainment, and the fans are your customer. NASCAR, I know you own the series and you own several of the tracks, but you know, maybe it comes to a point where a bunch of these teams, depending on how this charter lawsuit goes with Front Row Motorsports and 2311, maybe that leads to a bunch of teams saying, hey, it starts the dialogue where let's see if we can start our own racing series. I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing. I don't want to see NASCAR fail. And that's why I'm so adamant about my beliefs that I've stated so many times on this Rob's Hot Takes and this Area 51 Racing podcast. So, and you know, if there's anybody out there that would like to discuss options or have suggestions or whatever about the state of NASCAR and stuff, I'd be glad to talk with you. Maybe have you on the podcast or something. But either way, that's the end of my 3 hot takes for this week. So just remember, the Xfinity Series is off for the next couple of weeks. They return on the May 24th at Charlotte. This weekend, the Cup and Truck Series race at Kansas Speedway. On Saturday night, the truck race, and Sunday afternoon is the Cup race. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this up tonight. Thank you to our sponsors, Spartan Waste, Fox Sports Spartanburg, Harrison's, Action RV, Kylie Glick Racing, Mattman Designs, The Runner's Roost, Alliance Drive Away Solutions, Anna Moore Designs, Circle V Diecast, Driven Sunglasses and Driven Trackside, Elite Towing and Recovery, High Speed Auto, The Racing Warehouse and Armadillo Apparel, Belcher Cheesecake Creations, Flying Form Concrete Structures, Gale Beard Products, Wings, etc., Dialed In Focus Pouches by Whitetail Smokeless, Benzik Designs, Schatzenbach Landscaping, Enigma Tattoo Studio, Aero Parts Group, and Jeremy Clements Racing. Bobby, Dave, and I are grateful to all our sponsors, viewers, listeners, everybody that makes this possible. Without any of you, we'd just be three guys talking to each other about something we love, which is racing. So we greatly thank you all for the support and making this all possible. And also, before I go, I would like to wish all the mothers out there a happy Mother's Day. Have a great Mother's Day. Enjoy your time with your family and friends. Hopefully you get some relaxing time and get pampered on your special day. On that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great night. Have a great week. And remember, get out there and support your local racetracks and drivers. The drivers are the future of the sport, and you never know, you may be watching the future all-star at your local short track that will be a superstar in NASCAR someday. So on that note, take care. Have a great week. Peace, everybody.